Welcome to Podcast After Broadcast with Arush.
Okay, good to be back with you, everyone, again.
Yep.
We're here to
So,
discuss the Toronto Blue Jays and the upcoming trade deadline, which has a more positive outlook than the prior year. Would say you, Arush?
I would say so, but Kai, I wanted to go over the White Sox series first. What'd you think about that? 10-game win streak comes to an end, sadly. What'd you think of that series as a whole there?
Eventually, you're going to lose a game, but you would have rather it not been to the Chicago White Sox. Remember, the Blue Jays are in a tight race for the AL East, and it's getting tighter and tighter with the Mariners, and you got the Red Sox now who've overtaken them. You have the Orioles who are surging, but I don't think are quite close there. You still have the Rays, you have the Yankees, and then you still have the Astros, who are a game in front of you. It's a tight race, and as you said it earlier, it's a marathon. You're going to be neck and neck with all these competitors until you reach the finish line.
Well, here's my thing, that I like to say. Would you rather the Jays have lost to the Chicago White Sox, just a completely random team, that's kind of had our number this season? Like, not really, had our number in terms of, an insane amount, but been playing pretty good against us? Or would you have it been, the New York Yankees or the Boston Red Sox,
No, you possibly would have rather it been maybe if it had stopped it all like it did yesterday. Perhaps it could have been to a better team like the Giants after the All-Star break, or heck, if it is the New York Yankees, then it would have happened to the series after the All-Star break. So the Blue Jays are again. They do face a tough stretch coming. I wanted to actually ask you about that. The Blue Jays face a tough stretch when they come out of the All-Star break. They play 3 games against the Athletics in Sacramento starting today. But next Friday, they have 3 competitive teams that they're going to have to play against. And so the first one are the San Francisco Giants. The second one is the New York Yankees. And we've seen the Blue Jays do what they did against them last time. But then I think their biggest test, and I wanted to ask you about this specifically, is a 4-game series against Detroit, probably determining whether they can hang with the elites or not. So I'd like you to talk to me about that stretch and what that would mean for this squad.
Well, the first thing you have to talk about, before you get after the All-Star break is before the All-Star break. And right now, you're facing a Athletics team. They don't have a town name anymore, but the Athletics team that can't really pitch, but they can mash some baseballs. We just saw them go, have a pretty good series against the Braves. They got a couple of power hitters. They got Brent Rooker, who's going to the home run derby. Jacob Wilson, who's one of the higher averages in the league. You got Tyler Soderstrom with one of the most raw power in the league. They got hitters. Nick Kurtz, that's one of their promising rookies. But I think this is a series that the Jays have to take advantage of. This is a ballpark where they should take advantage of the fact that they have big hitters. It's about time that Vladdy, that Bo, that George has been going, but all the big boys really just get up and start carrying this offense. The last game of the White Sox series, I was really disappointed, not only because Vladdy's performance was bad, but the big boys didn't take over in the same way that you'd expect them to in years past. So this is kind of where I'm like, this is a big series to see. And last time our offense got rejuvenated, it was against the Athletics, so hopefully something like that happens again. You're playing the Giants right after, and the Giants are a team that's been faltering since they traded for Rafael Devers. They've been worse than the Red Sox since they traded for them. So I'm looking at, another series that you can take a couple of games out of it, and you're at home after the All-Star break. This is a good series. This is a series that you should take advantage of. And then the Yankees series, I think that's just as important as the other ones to show that we aren't just another team right there in the AL East that's kind of just battling. These series against the Yankees, the White Sox, you got to take advantage of this situation right now because the AL East, it's only going to get tougher as time goes. but you want to give yourself as much margin of error as possible to win as many games as possible and to get that buy. And then any team playing the Detroit Tigers right now, they're a really good team, but they aren't the scariest team in the league still. I'd say that's still the Dodgers. So I think the Jays have a pretty good stretch coming up where they have a lot of games they can win and a lot of ways to prove that they're a team that deserves to be where they are right now.
I remember you mentioned how the Giants are, but you still have to remember the Giants are a competitive team. The Giants are a competitive team, and there's no saying that they are a competitive team, which is why you should still think of them as that, as opposed to letting yourself relax.
No, but that's why I'm saying this is a team that isn't like unbeatable. This is a team.
And neither is the Yankees. We've shown that. But I want you to tell me, and I asked you this specifically coming up with the series against the Detroit Tigers. And I'll tell you first, my thing is that the Dodgers aren't the scariest team in the league for the Blue Jays specifically, because the Blue Jays will only play 3 games in Los Angeles. And so the Blue Jays are going to play a 4-game set against a team that they might face off eventually in the playoffs. So you don't know, by the way, whether that tells you what happens, but it shows you over the course of a 162 regular game season whether you can hang and bang with the elites. So talk to me about that 4-game series. That's a big one, Rich, and tell me exactly what it means for the Blue Jays.
I think we're thinking very far ahead, in my opinion. This is 4 series down the line. You got to take stuff 1 series down the line, but the Detroit Tigers, they're going to be a tough team to beat. You kind of said it all already. They'll tell us where we stand among the elites, but more importantly, I think that will be the first time this season that we'll be facing Tarek Skubal, and that is possibly the best pitcher in the league at any point. One of the better pitchers in the league for sure. So the series against the Detroit Tigers won't be as much about pitching as I think it is about the offense, because the Detroit Tigers, they've got a solid rotation, they've got a solid bullpen. This is the team that you have to beat with your offense. You can't expect the pitching. Their lineup is incredible. You can't get the pitching to throw 4 gems in a row against them. That's just asking too much from them. This is a series where the offense will have to carry it. Sometimes that is what the postseason is about too. When you get the offense going, that's when the team starts rolling. And right now, although the Jays have won a lot of games in a row, I still don't think they're firing in all cylinders. Or they did win a lot of games in a row. I still don't think they're firing in all cylinders. And I'd love for them to get going for that series just to see, what the potential of this team is. Because if they lose that series to the Tigers, we know where they stand. If they don't, we also know where they stand.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you on one point that you just made. The postseason, and what many would have led not just myself, but many to believe, and it's still true, is pitching is what's going to carry your team to the top. Pitching is what's going to take your team to the World Series. Pitching is what's going to make sure that you win the World Series. Offense, because in the postseason, I'll tell you what, the offense cannot string 5-6 hits together as easily as they can do that in the regular season. And in the regular season, that's difficult enough. But in the postseason, it's nearly impossible to string together hits, which is why in the postseason, offense, more so, it's the second most important thing behind pitching, but offense is about timely hitting. Who can get that big home run? We'll talk about that later, situational hitting when it comes to trades, but who can get that big home run? Who can smack that large double? It's not as much, and we've seen it, it's not as much about who can bang a couple of base hits through the right side, because pitching becomes that much tougher. Pitchers start to dot the corners a lot more because they're a lot more focused, and that's why offense, while it's important, it's more so about timely hitting than it is consistency.
See, I'm going to have to, postseason, again, we talk about stuff that's far off, but that's fair because this is a team that we're looking at that we think can get there. But I'm gonna have to disagree with you. I think a pitching cannot carry an offense. We saw that with the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays. Like that was you remember that the 2023 Jays, they were not fun to watch.
Well, first off, I have to say that the offense was so bad that the pitching could barely keep them afloat. It's about having an offense that is good you can have, what I'm trying to tell you is, you can have an offense that is good enough and a pitching staff that is really, really good that'll take you there. If you have an offense that is pitching that is really, really good and a pitching staff that is good enough will, I think, translate into terrible in the postseason.
Well, isn't that the same thing that was the Toronto Blue Jays in 2023? Their offense was not the worst in the league by any facets. They were all right. They were an all right team, and then all of a sudden, comes the postseason, and their pitching, they didn't do horrible. They didn't give up like 20 runs a game, but they still lost pretty easily against the Minnesota Twins.
Well, if you were to say that, I'll tell you this. First off, I'm going to tell you right now, Kevin Gausman, he was the right choice to start, and he didn't perform. He performed horribly against the Twins. Even if it's 3 runs, if it was 4 innings, it was 3 runs. His pitch count was up over 80. It was ridiculous. He could not get hitters out. He gave up a home run in the first inning, and then a home run later in the game. He didn't perform well. First off, that first pitcher didn't perform well. And second, we can talk about the game 2 blunder all we can. That's why I'm telling you, Arush, that postseason, when it comes to offense, I never said offense. It's not all or nothing. It's not you can have stellar pitching and offense that does nothing. No. What you do is you have really stellar pitching, and then offense is second most important. That's my line. Because offense, I told you, is about timely hitting. The Blue Jays, and I'll give you an example. The Blue Jays nearly got a 3-run double from Matt Chapman in Game 2 that would have given them the lead. Instead, it missed the line, and he grounded into a double play on the next pitch. They left 18 runners on base, and they couldn't get the big hit, the single, or the big 2-run double, or the big home run that could put them on top. They couldn't get those timely hits that would win them games. That's why I'm saying timely home runs and doubles, and heck, even singles that score a couple runs are so important. That's why it's not about consistency. That's why I said you can't string 3 or 4 or 5 hits together, because pitchers are just that much better. But you can. I think it's more easy that you can hit 1 home run that will flip the script and give your team the lead. And that's why the Blue Jays did so bad, because they didn't have anyone who could do that.
We're gonna have to move on from this topic because we kind of disagree with each other here, but I think it's a fair conversation that we're gonna probably have soon again. I don't think this is a conversation that's gonna be forgotten for very long between us. Hopefully where the Jays are right now, they stay there. You got something to say?
I would like to ask you. I would actually like to ask you when we move to another topic. I'd like to ask you about the Blue Jays' deadline situation and exactly what is to be determined from there. Because I'm not going to listen to reports about them being ultra aggressive or this or that, or passive or aggressive or whatever it is people are saying about them. I don't like to listen to reports. I like to listen to what goes out. I like if it's going to be any reports, it has to be on specific guys and how deals are working out, what exactly is in stock. I'd actually like to, before I ask you about that, I'd like to mention that Gregor Chisholm in the Toronto Star wrote an article examining the Blue Jays prospects, former blue chips, ready for the show, and the cream of the crop. And the cream of the crop is the 2 guys that they've been mentioning, Arjun Nimala and Trey Savage. But the Blue Jays here, they're most likely to hang on to both. They're ready for the show prospects like Joey Loperfido, Jonathan Clase, other guys of that nature. But for the Blue Jays here, offensively, what is a hole that you need to fix?
We talk about offense first, but I want to talk about the prospects again. The Jays, they have the prospects obviously to pull off a big trade with Arjun Nimala and Trey Savage both being top 100 prospect, but I don't think that they will be the top prospect in the Jays organization for very long. And I say that because I think the best prospect in the organization coming in would be this Sunday, whoever they draft. A lot of the mocks are saying Jamie Arnold. Some people are saying Ike Irish. I see, some hope for Liam Doyle, but whoever comes in this draft would be the cream of the top. Would be the top player. But going towards your point of offensive needs, I think they need a bat in the middle of the order to handle what Santander and Vladdy haven't really been able to do. I would say Vladdy's been a good hitter. He's been around 300 this year, but he just isn't the hitter that we saw last year. You need a middle of the order bat, in my opinion, that is just a power hitter. You don't need a dude who's, doing the small stuff, who's getting the bunt over. You need a dude who's up there, and he might strike out a lot, but he can get the job done. Guys like Eugenio Suarez. That's the guy who I look at, and that's the guy who I'd be terrified of if he was traded to the Yankees. So I know you're laughing, but
No, I'm laughing because you know who said that on our last try? Who was talking about I need a guy who doesn't do the small stuff, who hits the homers? Who said that?
Well, it was you, but I got another name in my mind. All right, so I'm thinking of a guy like Jesus Sanchez on the Miami Marlins. I'm thinking of a guy like, I guess that's about it. Now that I think about it, but those are two guys that I really like their profiles, Eugenio Suarez and Jesus Sanchez, to really fit on the Jays. I'm blanking on it. Oh, if the Athletics do end up selling, I'm thinking of. I think you were the first guy to come up with it, Tyler. Actually, no, I think I was in our group chat. I was the first guy to say Tyler Soderstrom.
Well, you mentioned him briefly, but then I started looking into his stats for this year, and I'm realizing that this guy he's got top-notch power.
One of the best in the league. That's a guy I'm looking at. A lot of people I hear, they say Luis Robert Jr. I don't think he's a great hitter anymore. I don't think he's that guy anymore.
No, ever since that injury, he's been he's been on the downslope.
Yeah, so I'm not looking at a guy like him. But yeah, and then when you get Santander back, he still hasn't started swinging the bat for some reason. But when you do get him back, that's another mid-order bat you can handle. And now you got a deep lineup. A lot of people are saying that the team is kind of overperforming because you can't expect your 7, 8, 9 hitters to be hitting 300 all season. That's just not going to happen on a good team realistically. So now you're looking at how can you make the guys who are hitting 4, 5, 6 right now, how can you move them down so that your team still gets better and you're not just a depth team but actually a scary team in the postseason. And I think Eugenio Suarez, Jesus Sanchez, Tyler Soderstrom, those are the kind of guys that do it for you.
I'm sorry, any Christians, if you're offended by him completely mispronouncing Jesus Sanchez's name, because I know a lot of Christians who could be offended by that, so I'm terribly sorry for Arush's complete botchery, which I don't think any of you care about. It's fine. But with Suarez, I like to your point. I mentioned this maybe on our last try of the broadcast, but come playoff time with the tough lefties, I'm going to enter the Red Sox into this. Aroldis Chapman and I won't say Justin Wilson, but say Tim Hill from the Yankees, or
James Spear from the Seattle Mariners.
yeah, Gabe Spire. You'll see Gabe Spire as well,
Josh
or
Hader.
yeah, Josh Hader is part of it. Tarek Skubal on the starters mound, but you might see a tough lefty in Tyler Holton, another one in Brant Herter,
Max Fried.
and indeed Max Fried. These are starters, but if you just look at bullpen alone, and it's pretty tough. Hader indeed himself, and on the Rays you have Mason Montgomery, Garrett Clevenger, and those guys.
Shane McClanahan, he's going to be back in a month or two.
So when you see those guys, and eventually it's deep into the game, and your team's say, I don't know, down by 2 or down by 1, you've got a runner or 2 on base. It's who's going to get that big hit to tie the game, who's going to get the big hit to give you the lead, and I like if a lefty on the mound and they're facing someone like Addison Barger, who depending on how he plays, you might let him swing away, but considering the matchups, you probably would put in a guy like Suarez who can just fit in at third base and right away afterwards, and he gives the potential to strike out, but I'd rather have the guy that potential to strike out and the potential to hit a large home run that flips the script for your team, as opposed to a guy who might get a base hit down the line and might score a run.
Kai, are you saying that Eugenio Suarez will be a depth piece on the Jays?
A depth piece? No. I'm telling you
You're telling me that if we do trade for Eugenio Suarez, that would mean that Addison Barger is moved to right field.
Well, no. I mean, it depends on what happens there. There's a lot of movement in positions that you can try. You can have Suarez at the DH sometimes if you need. Doesn't always have to play third base. You can have Barger play third base. Remember, the Blue Jays have a lot of versatile guys. They have Ernie Clement who can play anything. Miles Straw is usually strictly center guy, but I wouldn't surprise to see him in left. You can have Guerrero play third base on occasion if needed. There's so many versatile options that you have with your team that...
But I guess what I'm trying to say is if you're taking Addison Barger out of the game, probably won't be for Eugenio Suarez because Eugenio Suarez would be starting that game. I think over on that end, we're thinking about like more of the platoon.
It's just guys. That was what I was pointing at, was the platoon. I just named a guy who plays a position that Suarez plays. That's why I mentioned Barger. It's not saying that Barger would. Of course, Barger would be in right field and Suarez would be at third in a playoff game, considering the fact that both are such great hitters, but it all depends on what happens. It all depends on. That's why I just made the assumption that it would be Barger, because Clement is a righty too, who hits lefties very well. So
what would be your trade for Eugenio Suarez at this current point? He's not going to be cheap. If the Diamondbacks are selling, he's not going to be a cheap player.
No one said he's going to be cheap.
Yeah.
But I'm not. Here's the thing: is that. Do I want to trade Nimala or Savage? No, not for a rental. Here's the problem. If Suarez agrees to one of the deals sort of similar to this Tyler Glasnow one, where he signs an extension basically right after being traded to the Blue Jays, then I will be willing to trade Nimala specifically. Because the Blue Jays their hitting is good, especially their young guys. Their hitting is good. They've got good hitters. Barger looks like a breakout star. Clement has done very well. Tyler Heineman could be a very solid piece for the squad. But the Blue Jays here, I'm thinking that this team at least has another bat there. So if Suarez pens an extension right after, I'm keeping you Savage off the board, but I will trade Nimala if he pens an extension right after. If not, I'll leave the both of them on the off the table, and I'll have them go with the ready for the show prospects. I could ship off Clase, I could ship off Loperfido. You also have right? You also have a lot of minor league pitchers in the depth. Angel Bastardo. You have so many others. Such I can't name them off the top of my head, but you also have the former blue chip prospects, Aurelvis Martinez. You have Ricky Tiedemann. Those guys that could be inserted into a package, all into a package. It would look something like Loperfido, Clase, Tiedemann, Martinez, and yeah, I don't think you'd give maybe another one, maybe Bastardo. That would be 5 because non-contending teams always like to add pitching there, and Bastardo would be a good addition as a pitcher, considering the fact that the Blue Jays have Tiedemann, but they'd give a right-handed pitcher as well. So five guys inserted into a trade for Eugenio Suarez. Assuming he's a rental.
Well, I think on Jays, on the Jays pipeline, there's only two prospects that I would consider untouchable at this moment. It would be Trey Savage, and it would be the 18-year-old Johnny King. Both of those guys, just too good of pitchers to really let go of right now. But if it does come down to it, if you're getting a package where it's Eugenio Suarez and Merrill Kelly, who's been performing pretty well this year, or if it's Eugenio Suarez, a dude from their bullpen, and a couple of that trade, I wouldn't hate that trade at that point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Kelly can only help your team, but it depends on if Kelly's the centerpiece of pitchers, and we'll talk about pitchers later, but Kelly cannot be the centerpiece of pitchers. He'd probably have to slot somewhere in between Bassett and Lauer, Bassett and Scherzer, considering the fact that he's 37, he's performed well, but I really like guys who can be a bit younger and have more of a potential. But anyhow, Merrill Kelly would probably only help your team, and he would, especially if he's a back end guy, one that can help stabilize the back end of the rotation, considering the rotation hasn't been that well. But with Suarez,
I think a good way to look at pitchers. Oh, sorry to interrupt you, but I think a good way to look at pitchers is if they would start over your 2 or 3 guys before you trade for them. Do you think that Merrill Kelly would start over Kevin Gausman in a playoff game? I think it's debatable, but no. I don't think so. Do you think he's going to start over Chris Bassett? Again, debatable. I don't think so.
No, I don't even know if I'd consider the possibility. The rotation is always shortened. You're assuming that Scherzer and Lauer go into bullpen roles because you're not going to have 5 starters by the time. Because you're thinking the Blue Jays head to the postseason with the way they've played now, and if they do, you're not going to have 5 guys. You may have 4, or you may have 3 in a bullpen, but you would not have if Kelly's there. Heck. If some Blue Jays fans, with the way he's been pitching, some Blue Jays fans would try and start Lauer as the 4th starter over Kelly if he were to be added to this Blue Jays roster. But it's I think if you want Kelly to be the 4th, you assume that Scherzer, Kelly, 2 of the Scherzer, Kelly, Lauer, 2 of those guys are heading into bullpen roles. It doesn't matter what they are, but they're heading into bullpen roles. Because if you're going to have 4 starters, you're not going to have 5 or 6. You're going to have 4. You might have 3, depending on how the schedule works. But no, I would not. You can say it's debatable. I don't think there's much of a debate. I would not start him over Chris Bassett. I would not start him over Kevin Gausman. Heck, I wouldn't want to start Chris Bassett in a playoff game due to the kind of the pitchers that I want to add to this roster. So let's move into pitching. I'm glad that we've gone over some hitting. Eugenio Suarez would be a great deadline addition. I know that the Yankees are after him. There are a few other guys that you can go for. We've mentioned Tyler Soderstrom. I think they're gettable if you can put a convincing argument enough. But I want to, as I'm transitioning into pitchers, I'm going to look at one bold move that it's not going to happen, but it would be great. And this would be probably one of the exceptions that I would add Trey Savage and Johnny King blindly to the table, almost. Not blindly, but if not, unfortunately, the Cincinnati Reds are not contending. So I like that team, honestly. They have a good aura about them, and I wish they were, but they're not. So you have to take advantage. The Blue Jays putting everything on the table for flamethrower Hunter Green.
I think that's interesting because I don't think that they are going to trade him. I just don't think. I think he's an untouchable for that organization right now. It doesn't make sense, in my opinion.
Doesn't really, but he's been an untouchable for a few years now.
Well, I think he's more than just an untouchable for them. I think he's their, after Ellie De La Cruz, he is their franchise's big piece. He's the big guy in that franchise.
Could be possible, but you would like to see. I would throw King, Savage, Namala, anyone the Reds wanted.
Because that's the same thing as Joe Ryan. Because the best that that Trey Savage, that Johnny King could be is probably Hunter Green or Joe Ryan. I think that's their peak.
I don't think comparing Joe Ryan to Hunter Green. I think Hunter Green's a stratosphere above Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan, if I'm going
I would have to disagree with that. Hunter Green is one of the...
He's had solid years. He's had solid years, Ryan. But Ryan is someone, heck, you could slot in between Barrios and Bassett, and that would make a great rotation. But Brian could potentially be your number 2. It's very hard to imagine him as an ace as well.
See, I'm gonna have to disagree with you because I think Ryan is one of the better pitchers in the league ever since he has been up. He's been really incredible. He has.
I would go after Green. Ryan, again, he can help your team. He can do well. He could be your second starter. He might be your first, considering the fact that Barrios has been solid, and Ryan's had a terrific year this year. I'm not going to tell you that Ryan's been great all his career, which is definitely not true.
Well, not all his career, but he's been one of the better pitchers in the league since he did come up. That's just.
I would throw Namala. I would not throw Namala to. I would not throw Savage and King to the Twins for Ryan, but I would actually not throw Savage specifically. One of the two. You can't give both for Ryan. But I would give...
Obviously not both, because that's a bad trade. But what I'm trying to say is, at their peak, you're hoping that, Johnny King or Trey Savage are at the same level as Joe Ryan. He's an all-star this year. That's just one example of how good he's been throughout his career.
You hope that both of them could be Hunter Green. I mean, everyone, let's be honest, wants to be Hunter Green. He throws 100. He's got a great slider. He's got a great splitter. Everyone really wants to be him because he's got great stuff, raw stuff. And I'm going to talk about raw stuff because the next guy I want to, and I know you don't like him as much, but Sandy Alcantara from the Marlins, he's had good past success. And the raw stuff is still there. But remember, we still have to look at the resources that we have here. We have Pete Walker. I'm going to tell you right now, Pete Walker is hands down the best pitching coach in the major leagues. He is. He helped Barrios through that tough time in 2022. Gosman's had some struggles. Bassett's had some struggles. Every pitcher has struggles. But when the Blue Jays have had terrible struggles, Kikuchi specifically, Walker mentored these guys. Walker mentors all of these guys, and he doesn't tell them how to pitch, but he's very helpful. He gives them great advice. He works with them tirelessly, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Blue Jays acquired Alcantara. I would be surprised at that, but I wouldn't be surprised that if they did, that Walker would bring that stuff back, that raw stuff back to us seeing the ace that Alcantara was.
Well, I'm going to have a counterpoint for you on that. You're talking about how Jose Barrios and Yusei Kikuchi were fixed by Pete Walker. My counterpoint to that is it took more than a season for them to be fixed. In 2022, and for Kikuchi, I think it was 2023, right? Where he was bad? Or was it both of them 2022?
I would say that's a counterpoint, but then the
No,
argument
no, but I'm just
goes.
asking you first. Were both of them bad in 2022, or was it like 2023 for Kikuchi and 2022 for
It was
Barrios?
both. It was both
Yeah.
2022.
My counterpoint to that would be Pete Walker took more than a whole season to fix Jose Barrios, who was really good when he first came to the Jays in 2021. Took him more than a whole season to fix him. It took him more than half a season to fix Kikuchi. Kikuchi had some rough starts when he first got traded to the Jays. It's not all, that it's all going to come together the second you get with Pete Walker, because historically it hasn't. It takes some time for pitchers to work, and that's why I'm worried about Alcantara, because as he's playing in the NL East, which I think is a really good hitting division, but I think it's much worse than the AL East, and you aren't missing bats there at all. You're facing some teams that have not been having fun offensively this year, and you just can't miss any bats. And that worries me.
With the Blue Jays, though, remember, Alcantara, you have to take into account that Alcantara has never pitched for a team that has been competitive. The one year that the Marlins were, he was on the injured list. He had Tommy John, remember?
I
So
do remember that.
So the Blue Jays here, you have to take that into account, and then just remember, I like to look at raw stuff in the eye test. He's still got the great fastball, the 97, the 98, the two of them, and he has the changeup in the low 90s, and then the slider in the low 90s as well. He has the curveball. He's got a good curveball, and no, isn't it going to snap into place? No, it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think if you were to add him, and by the postseason he gets there and he feels that he's ready, and that would be a huge boost to this team, as well, considering the fact that Alcantara has the stuff to compete in a postseason game. He has stuff. The arsenal is similar to Tarek Skubal. His stuff, of course, this year is not as good, but the arsenal itself is similar to Tarek Skubal. And all it depends on is location. His fastball location hasn't been good. Remember, Walker is the entire reason. The Walker has never been fired. If you're talking about historically, nothing's clicked into place. But with Walker, he's helped so many pitchers. Marco Estrada, who, by the way, even in a decade of 2010s, he had a fastball hovering around 88. He helped Marcus Stroman become basically the Blue Jays' ace. He helped Aaron Sanchez blossom into a great young pitcher before he went to Houston, and stuff just started just falling apart for him. He helped so many of these guys, not just in the bullpen, but in the starting rotation, form it into such a great, and it didn't happen right away, but it happened over time. It was the same thing with J.A. Happ, but you cannot say that Walker hasn't done much for this franchise when basically he mentored that whole starting rotation that gave the Blue Jays back-to-back ALCS trips.
I don't think that's what I said. I was more so trying to say that for any pitching coach, it's going to take time to realize and experiment with stuff to get better. I'm getting your point, but the price for Sandy Alcantara is going to be, it's got to be something that you aren't giving up too much. This is the kind of player where you give up
It's going to be cheap, and that's why actually I want to, because they're going to buy. It's almost a buy low, hope high for him, because the Marlins, their pitching factory seems like a clone. Big, tall dude, throws 97, 98, has good breaking stuff and maybe a good off speed. And Cabrera, Perez, and Alcantara, the big three on that team that has the same stuff, but they can't seem to get it together. Why? They don't have a good pitching coach. But and they don't have a good team around them to give them any confidence. Is I'm saying that it's an excuse for any of their numbers? No. But what I'm telling you is that we've seen past success from Alcantara specifically. And now that his value is a bit lower and you don't have to give too much for a similar guy with similar stuff to his teammates who may be performing a bit better this year, if you don't have to give too much for a clone of Perez and Cabrera in the Arsenal section, then That would be great. I think eventually, it could take time. I don't think it will take all that much. And I think the Blue Jays eventually, maybe not over this year, but over the next year, over the 2027 year when they start building, depends on where they build their direction next year, but we're not going to think that far ahead. All I'm just going to say is when it takes time, which it will, then eventually I think he's going to find his way back to the kind of ace that we saw in 2021, 2022, 2023 before he left for injury. So yeah, I think the Blue Jays can do very well with him.
Yeah, I think, trade deadline. I think this point, well, we kind of already talked about the offense. We kind of already talked about the pitching. In terms of starters, I wanted to talk to you more about the bullpen because the Jays bullpen has been, decent. Like, they've been good. We've seen some pretty tough bullpens in the past, and this bullpen's a lot better than those bullpens. But, Ryan Burr, he's injured. Jimmy Garcia, hopefully he'll be back after the break. Nick Sandlin, another elbow injury. You're hoping for the best from him, but a lot of people aren't expecting to see him back this year. You've got Byrod, you've got Braden Fisher, you've got Jeff Hoffman, you've got Brendan Little there. But it still feels like they're one or two pieces away from being a great bullpen. What would you say about the bullpen and their importance in the next
Easy. It's a very weird situation for this bullpen. Also, you forgot to mention Justin Brule, who's been a very nice addition to this bullpen.
Well, he's had like 2 innings, so
he's had 2 innings, but I've liked the stuff from the eye test of what I've seen.
Of course, and then Robinson Pena. He's probably gone in a couple of days when Jimmy Garcia comes back. Jimmy Garcia's injury was something because he fell in a bathtub. That's what happened. Really pitcher's life, but
yeah, I don't know what to say about that.
I want to hear what he was doing around the bathtub that he fell so hard. Was he running a mile around the bathtub? Was he just going in for a swim?
Maybe he was. Maybe he wanted to break his elbow to make it more baseball-like injury when really he soaked chemicals into himself by making himself an Amari Stoudemire bath, which is basically a bath full of wine, if anyone doesn't know.
All right, so back to the bullpen.
The bullpen. I like that you mentioned the bullpen. Yeah, I will say that the bullpen needs some work. But before he was injured, I was thinking of grabbing Ben Joyce from the Angels. However, for the Blue Jays here, you're looking at teams that don't contend. I'm trying to look around the league. David Bednar has been mentioned as a potential piece considered his resurgence. You also have in the NL East. I like looking at Justin Martinez's name before I realized that he was out for a long time. That's another one that you wish was ready. Seranthony Dominguez or Felix Bautista, if the Orioles start receding again and they keep playing the way they are because they look like they're going to sell. If you keep looking at Atlanta, you look. I'm not sure about Raisel Iglesias, but you can look at Iglesias. He's definitely one of those guys. I don't think Atlanta has a good enough bullpen for me to say, oh yeah.
Well, they have Aaron Bummer.
I don't know about Bummer. I really don't. Dylan Lee.
He's a funky lefty, We used to have Aaron Loop in those 2015, 2016 teams.
Dylan Lee is someone I could mention against left-handed batters. Dylan Lee is definitely someone that I would think about. That's one that if I have to think about that I could definitely go after. Dylan Lee's one. But then you go down to Miami as well, Minnesota, not Miami. Minnesota, and you go get Joan Duran from the Twins. That would be another one that would be terrific, I would think.
The Twins, I don't think they're going to trade a lot of people because they're still technically in the mix. That's what I mean about
Not really. It's mediocrity, and we've seen it before from our team, from the Blue Jays.
Mediocrity gets rewarded in this league with the 8 playoff teams. So
they're not. I don't think they're going to continue part of the mix. So Duran could potentially be on the move. Although we'll see. And potentially you'll see on the move as well from the Royals. I would look at Lucas Urseg. I would look at Lucas Urseg. I would look at Lucas Urseg because, yeah, he's a right-hander, but he's very, very good. And I would like to try. Heck, I'd even look at Angel Zerpa as a lefty for this team because Brendan Little can't do it on his own, and Justin Brule, we don't know what's going to happen with him. So Angel Zerpa would be a great addition to this team. So would Lucas Urseg. If you could try a package for the both of them, that would be great.
I mean, this is a lot of hoping. In terms of me, I don't really have a big bullpen option that would change everything for this Jays team. I think the most important thing to remember is that the team that stays the most healthy is the one that has the highest chance to succeed. And
You don't know about that. Sometimes you have to, but like we said, with the offense, with the pitching, and we've gone over starting pitching, but I'd like to just trim over it one more time. I've told you guys that I want to be as part of Aces or as one of the two. We've talked about Joe Ryan, that would be great. We've talked about Sandy Alcantara. I think that would be great. Heck, even Edward Cabrera, it would come to a heftier price, but that would be great. Another one I think to slot in between the third and fourth. The third and the fourth zone, the third and fourth pitching slot, Seth Lugo. If you go for Alcantara, you go for Cabrera. If you go for Ryan, that would be terrific. But then Seth Lugo in between, say, Gausman and Bassett to be your number 3 once the pitching starts. Because if you get Ryan, Barrios, Lugo, or Alcantara in peak form or close to peak form, Alcantara, Barrios, Lugo, and Alcantara, Barrios, Gausman, Lugo, something like that, or Alcantara, Barrios, Lugo, Gausman, Ryan, Barrios, Lugo, Gausman. That would be great, because then that looks like a much stronger, a sturdier rotation. That slides everyone down. It's the same thing with the offense. Having Suarez and then having Santon on your back slides everyone down a notch, and that way you get yourself a balanced team. And that's what the Blue Jays want heading into the postseason.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much about what I would say too about the bullpen. Do you have anything else you want to talk about? I think we kind of talked about all of those. I was thinking we could talk a little bit about the state of the other teams in the league. We kind of got there a little bit, but tonight this is a big series for the Yankees. The Jays have kind of a 3-game easier series. The Yankees, they're playing the Chicago Cubs, and the guy who's pitching for the Chicago Cubs, Chris Flexen, he has a ERA under 1 so far this season, 33 innings pitched. But he's more of an opener, so that would be interesting tonight. The Baltimore Orioles are playing the Miami Marlins. They're both teams at the same level. Another series that is really important in terms of the AL East and the playoffs. The Tampa Bay Rays and the Red Sox. You've got Drew Rasmussen, who's been a really good pitcher throughout his career and even this season, going against Hunter Dobbins, the rookie for the Red Sox. He's had a couple of good outings, nothing, to be too afraid of, but pretty good pitcher. Rockies and Reds, kind of Actually, the Reds are kind of in the playoff mix, I would say, in the NL right now. They're only 3 games back, so a lot of stuff can happen. Then you have the Seattle Mariners, who have another tough test in the Tigers, and the Tigers might be the first team to reach 60 wins tonight because they have got Tarek Skubal going against Luis Castillo, and I think we both know who we like in that matchup more.
Yeah.
You got the Guardians going against the White Sox, and the Guardians have been struggling as of late, but they've had 4 straight wins now, so something to look for. The Twins are playing the Pirates, who are in fact worse than the Athletics. So another series.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe it. I've seen all this. I've seen all the scores. You take a look at the other teams, and you don't know what's going to happen over a 3-game stretch. But hopefully for the Blue Jays, it comes out on another high note heading into the All-Star break. So I'd like to thank you all, listeners, for us and allowing us to fill your radios and fill your homes with our wonderful voices, specifically mine. And I'm glad you're able
Yours is
to.
great.